everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our very special version of On the Shelf. For this episode, we are getting ready for Banned Book Week. My name is Carol, and I'm here with Heidi, and she's going to get us started.
Hey, everybody. We are really excited to have this opportunity to share some titles with you. Some of you may not even know what Banned Book Week is, so I want to give you just a little bit of history. Banned Books is an annual event. It was started in 1982 as a response to a lot of things that were going on in the world at the time. So you may, like, what is a banned or challenged book? So challenge is an attempt to remove material from a library, and a banning is when that removal actually happens. Books are banned and challenged for a great many reasons, and you will see some of those discussed as we go through this list of titles that we have for you. This year's Banned Book Week is September 26th to October 2nd. And the titles we're discussing today are the top 10 most challenged books of 2020. So we hope that you enjoy our discussion, and we look forward to having conversation with you about books and bans and all of the information that we have provided. So stick around and hope you enjoy it. All right. Our first title this morning is George by Gino. And as you can see, this book was challenged, banned, and restricted for LGBTQIA+ content, conflicting with a religious viewpoint and not reflecting the values of our community. George is 10 years old, has a best friend named Keely, is pretty good at school, maybe a little bit bullied, lives with mom and brother, and thinks that he's pretty sure he's not he's she, which is where the challenge comes in. So this story is a discussion of George's desire to play a female role in a school play and how that helps him come out to those who live in his world, to his mom, to his brother, to his best friend, and to the school as a whole. The story is based around this class play, Charlotte's Web, and George's desire to play Charlotte because it speaks to him in a way that nothing else recently has. It's definitely worth the read. It's an easy read if you're an adult, and it is on the shelf here today, so check it out.
All right, so the next title is All American Boys. This is by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiely, and I'm super excited about this book, even though it's back from 2015. This is a YA, a teen book, fiction, and one of the authors, Jason Reynolds, is actually the honorary chair of Banned Books Week for this year. So congratulations, Jason. So this book is about two teenage boys, and it is told from both points of view. So I think that in and of itself, it makes it a little different than some books that are similar to it. But I do love the two characters and hearing their two different perspectives. One of them is Rashad, and Rashad is wrongly suspected of shoplifting, and unfortunately also accused of assaulting a woman during this whole altercation, and during his arrest is beaten. So the other main character, Quinn, is a boy from the same school. He is white, and he witnesses this beating. Initially, he pretends like he wasn't there and didn't witness it. And you'll have to read the book to find out what happens. But basically, you can see it has been banned and challenged for profanity, drug use, and alcoholism. And because it was thought to promote anti-police views, as well as contain diverse topics. And this one just gets me too much of a sensitive matter right now. And I think, you know, one of the things about the themes this year for the most of the books that are challenged is that the topic matter is sensitive. And I think having those conversations and having a fictional story to use to have those discussions is helpful rather than hurtful. So that's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite picks.
I agree with you, because one of the things on George last year when it was banned and challenged was that they didn't think that schools and libraries should put books in the hands of children that caused discussion. And it's just like, where else are you going to generate the discussion? And generate it in a safe and healthy way.
Exactly. And that's the whole point, right? So it's kind of an interesting story about these two authors, how they ended up collaborating together. They were on a tour, I think this was from the publishers, and had them room together, and they didn't even know each other, and both had the initial like, why do we have to room with each other? I don't even know this guy, and just initially kind of clashed, but because they were roomed together, had all kinds of wonderful discussions. A lot of them revolved around race, and became good friends and kept communicating with each other afterwards, and were inspired to write this book after some of the police brutality incidences in Ferguson. So I kind of like the history of how this book was born.
All right. Something Happened in Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice, by Marianne, Celano, Marietta Collins, and Ann Hazzard. This is a new book, just recently out. As you can see, it has been challenged for divisive language because it was thought to promote anti-police views. This is a story about two kids, one black, one white, in a town, unnamed town. This talks about a shooting of a black man. And you get the perspective of both children and sort of trying to understand what was going on and why it was important. So it's set in it starts out in the elementary school, that some little kids had heard the discussion about the shooting, which was on TV, but a lot of the parents weren't talking to the little kids, but they heard the big kids talking, so they know. And they wanted to ask questions. So little girl Emma, you know, she goes home and she's talking to her mom, and, you know, it's very confusing, you know, because this is not something that we're used to. So she's talking, you know, to her mom, and whether it's a mistake, was it targeted because the man who was shot was black, and all of that. And so they talk about, you know, what that looks like, and about slavery, and what's the distinction between black and white, and that kind of thing, and sort of, and the patterns of racial injustice that we've been seeing. And then, you know, so they talk about, you know, well, how can a little kid like Emma make things better? Like helping each other be fair, and helping other kids understand about not teasing kids because they have funny names, or what they perceive to have funny names. And then there's the other character is Josh, and Josh is a little black boy, and he wants to know if the police can go to jail, which is why, you know, they think probably was why they challenge it for anti-police views, because again, he's confused about why was this black man shot. And why would the police go to jail or not go to jail? And there's a whole discussion about the fact that there are black police. So why would that happen? But, and that sometimes maybe even the police who are supposed to make the good decisions don't make good decisions. So, and then it has a discussion about being proud of who he is, you know, of his history and where he comes from. and then, you know, like some of the other kids. But then what in the end, what you see is Josh and Emma standing up for the new kid in class who comes from somewhere else and whose name is Omed, and he doesn't speak English very well and stuff. And so they come together to protect him and to provide him with a safe environment to work in. So they have learned from this situation, you know, you need to look beyond the black and the white.
All right, that takes us to our next title, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This book, since it's been published in 1937, is one of the most banned and challenged books for racial slurs, racist stereotypes, negative effects on students. I also read in the past that it's been challenged and banned for anti-business attitudes. So just really interesting reasons, I think, when you look through the reasons, because they do change on this book from year to year. So this is the story of Georgia and Lenny, two friends, also migrant ranch workers in California during the Depression. And, you know, a lot of the whole idea of the negative themes and the negative effects on students, to me, stands out as odd, because I think there are some real positive themes running throughout the book. A big one is that friendship between George and Lenny, as well as they often discuss their dreams. And I think that theme right there, I love that in fiction. And just the companionship between them. It's something, even though I've read this book a few times, it's been a long time since I read it, but that always is something that I remember first when I think of this book. You know, the language and the racial slurs and any kind of negative themes in the book aren't in there just for shock value. They are critical to the plot and the structure of the story. And I think that's, you know, people that have read the book know it, and those that haven't maybe have issues with it. But again, it's just that avenue for discussion about those topics. Another theme that isn't mentioned here this year, but has been in the past, is the negative stereotypes and violence against women. And so, you know, it's kind of like the makers of the writers of South Park, it's that cartoon show, super offensive. They also did the Book of Mormon on Broadway. You know, I've seen a documentary about them. They actually think, okay, who haven't we offended recently? So they're specifically making sure that they, you know, hit all those audiences. It feels that way in this book too, even though it's from 1937. There's almost no one left out, but it's not mean-spirited. It's not, it's more telling of the times, the way that the language is used. It's right. A picture of
me,
what.
That's one of the things about a lot of the classics that are on these lists.
Yeah.
They're reflective of the time in which they were written.
Exactly. And if we
don't, not appropriate now, doesn't mean it wasn't what it was.
Exactly. And if we don't take that and remember it and reflect on it, again, that's history can repeat itself. And I think we see that today. And so I think that's why some of these books remain relevant and important.
Absolutely. And another classic title, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is on a lot of school reading lists, comes up every time. And as you can see this time around, banned and challenged for racial slurs and their negative effects on students, featuring a white savior character and its perception of the Black experience. Again, written in the 60s, so absolutely relevant to the context of the time and place. This story is set in a small southern town with a 6-year-old narrator, based loosely on the life of the author. The main character is Scout. She's 6. She is the daughter of a lawyer named Atticus. And Atticus has been hired, instructed, what shall we say, to defend a Black man who is accused of rape of a white woman. And, and he agrees to do so to the best of his abilities. In that time and place, there was not a lot of respect for Blacks. And so Scout gets a lesson a hard lesson in what people can do to each other because of different colors of skin and different belief structures. And it's a good read, but it can be a hard read if you're not used to thinking about life in that way. But it is absolutely, again, as Carol says, reflective of the time and place in which it was written, and one that keeps popping up on the list because people do take sections of it out of context. This has also been made into a movie, so probably there are a lot of people out there who've seen the movie with Gregory Peck as Atticus, and it's a very good story, and it is one that is well worth reading to create the discussion.
All right, the last title that we're going to talk about today is The Hate You Give, and this is by Angie Thomas. This was her first book. It's been challenged for profanity, was thought to promote an anti-police message, and the main character is Star. She lives in kind of two worlds. Her home is in sort of a urban city environment, pretty poverty-stricken neighborhood, but she goes to school in a suburban prep school. And again, so kind of her school, she's, an African-American student amongst a lot of white students. And at home, there's a lot of diversity, but not so many white people. So it's really interesting to hear her perspective on, the way things are seen in both worlds. And specifically, she ends up, unfortunately, being the only witness to a police shooting. And it happens to be one of her childhood friends, and she's in the car with him when it happens. And this happens early on in the book, so this really isn't a spoiler if you haven't read it. But what happens from then on is what is so interesting. And along the way, again, those challenges about the profanity, it's the same theme. The profanity isn't used for shock. It's integral to the structure of the story. So I think that the way that it's handled is really artful, and I understand where some parents may have issues with this book, but I still think it's an important piece of literature that should be read in schools and should be available in libraries because of the themes that run throughout it. So she has a couple other books that she's written since then, and they're just as good, I think. They're really nice. And for this one, as with most books, read the book. The movie's so different. They changed dramatically some of those themes that are really important, especially the ending. So, not to say the movie's not good, but read the book first. All right. So today we just talked about a few of the top 10 most challenged books of 2020, of last year. Here are the others. And of all of these 10 titles, we do own them here at Tulare Public Library. Because this is a recorded program, it's a little different than our typical on the shelf. So by the time you see this, it may be checked out at that time, but we have lots of copies throughout the San Joaquin Valley Library system. So if you can't get a hold of it when you walk in the building, you can place a request on it and should get it pretty soon because there are so many copies. The last thing that I would like to share with you is just a little more information from the American Library Association about how they reasons for challenges and who initiates these challenges. So their theme this year is Books Unite Us. And if you take a look at this, you can see the larger the font, that indicates that that is one of the main trends or reasons that the books have been banned or challenged. And just to make sure everyone understands the difference, banned books are books that have been removed from a library or classroom or institution. A challenged book means that someone has requested for it to be removed from that institution, that library or classroom. So just wanted to make sure, because there is a difference in that. And who initiates these challenges? Here we can see that it is 50% parents, 20% would be library patrons, 11% board and administration, and so on. It's interesting to me that only 1% is from students. I think that is really telling. And at the bottom, where do these challenges take place? Overwhelmingly 43% at public libraries. So it does happen. 38% would be in the schools and the school libraries, or in the classrooms, sorry. 15% are in the school libraries, and then just 2% academia and 2% other. So I know sometimes numbers are boring, but I think these are just fascinating because it really does help us understand why this happens. And here at Tulare Public Library, we really embrace discussions in the community, regardless of any of these reasons that those books might be challenged.
Right.
So,
I mean, and it's the last little bit. It says, typically held during the last week of September, Banned Book Week highlights the value of free and open access to information. That's what the library is all about, is providing you and yours with free and open access to the information that you want and need. And you know, what you choose to do with that information is up to you. It is not our place to tell you what to think, just to provide you the access.
well said, Heidi. Thank you so much.